2024. I'd like to first start by asking our clerk to call to make sure that a quorum is present.
Thank you. Trustee Hesse? Present. Thank you. Trustee Lau?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Biondo?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Giuliano?
Here.
Thank you. And Mayor?
Present.
Thank you. I'd like to say that we also have Attorney Moran and Treasurer Gasco.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Now we're going to go a little bit out of order from the agenda, or is it on the agenda this way? We'd like to have a motion to go into executive session. Motion by Trustee Laux. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Giuliano. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Welcome back. We have just returned from executive session and we've already confirmed the presence of a quorum earlier with Clerk Perillo calling the roll call. Right now, I'd like to ask the board to stand and others to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd just like to remind everyone, if they are going to speak, just to make sure your microphone is turned on for the benefit of our audience who is not able to be present. Our first order of business today is to welcome Treasurer Gafka, Stephen, to present the fiscal year 2024-25 Village of Port Jefferson tentative budget. Treasurer Gafka.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board, public. First, I'd just like to talk about the process that we take to get here. We started in February, and we distribute out to all the department heads within the village government.
Can I ask you, is your microphone on? Start again.
So I'd just like to talk about the process that we took to get here. In February, we start with sending out to all the department heads worksheets for them to fill out their wish list of what they think that they'll need for expenses for the next year. After they fill out those expense sheets, they send it to the treasurer's office. We compile them within our software and build a very rough tentative budget. We go from there, meeting with the mayor, members of the administration, and the department heads again, to go through all of the expenses, what works, what doesn't work, what can we leave in, what can we take out, and we try and come to a compromise so that everybody feels that they've had a little hand in the budget. From there, we stamp it in as the tentative budget, which was done March 20th. It was available online as of the 22nd of March. After the trustees have a chance to review it, held several meetings with the members of the board that were available. And we went through and we made changes based off of some of the recommendations that they had on the tentative budget. After we input those changes into the budget, we have a modified tentative budget, which is what I'm here presenting today. So with that, I'll go right into the presentation. And what we're going to start with are the challenges that we had building this budget from the beginning. The first and primary challenge we had is we had a $541,000 budgetary increase in our non-discretionary spending. So what non-discretionary spending means, those are our contractual obligations and expenses that we have to pay, including your medical insurance, dental insurance for employees, the retirement and workers' compensation, and the like. We also had an increase in our municipal insurance of $131,000 which is a large increase. It was roughly a 50% increase over the previous year. The next major obstacle that we had was the LIPA glide path. So as many residents and the board are aware, we have a glide path which brings the tax burden from the LIPA properties down every year. This year we had to decrease their property taxes by $135,000 from the year before. It also included a roughly $570,000 assessment valuation decline. That has an effect on the tax rate ultimately down the road. We also, another obstacle was the realignment of our generally accepted accounting practices. So what does that mean? It means we don't use fund balance as a revenue source for the budget. Fund balance is a valuable resource that if you build it up over time, you can help reduce your burden on taxes and on your debt. Fund balance, if you don't have it backed up by real cash and real numbers, you can end up operating at a hole right at the beginning of the fiscal year because it's a plug number. It's not backed up by any actual revenue. It's based off of what you already have. So if you use it and your numbers could potentially be off, you could be operating at a cash deficit just to start the year. We also eliminated the use of Consolidated Highway Improvement Program funds, CHIPS. That's a grant program through New York State that they give you grant monies for acceptable projects for your highway improvement, sidewalks, paving. And when you use that, you don't use that as a hole to plug a hole in your budget. What you use that in your capital fund where you do your paving projects so that you can offset the costs that are associated with those projects. So when you put it in the general fund, those projects have to be booked in general. That is not what typically happens in the Village of Port Jeff. We do our capital improvement projects in our capital fund, and that is where that money belongs. And then the next challenge was an administrative principle of zero basing our budget. What that means is we look at all of the expenses that the village has and we try and build from zero up. Only what you need, only what is necessary to keep the tax burden down on the residents. The next PowerPoint slide that we want to talk about is our strategic budget initiatives. The primary objective of this budget was to keep below the tax cap. As some may know, the village has pierced the tax cap in 8 out of the last 9 fiscal years in budgets. So it was important to try and keep this budget under the tax cap so that we could reduce the burden for the taxpayers on this budget. We cut our discretionary spending by $260,000. That's the spending that we have control over. Any spending that we don't necessarily need in the budget to operate, we tried to eliminate those expenses to keep the budget tighter so that the appropriations didn't grow and the total spending didn't get out of control. We had a retrenchment in our parking operations. So what we did is we redistributed all of the operational aspects for parking to the individual departments that have expertise with the parking operations. The financial aspect went to the Treasury Department, vendor relationships to the clerk, code enforcement with an increased focus on enforcement back with code. And then the Justice Court, looking at the data to try and be more data-driven in our parking operations and to try and reduce the tax burden on the village residents. The retrenchment ultimately resulted in a $190,000 decrease in appropriations and spending, which gets passed on in the benefit of the taxpayer. We reinstituted shared operational expenses between the general fund and the country club fund. So what shared expenses mean, the general fund employees perform operational aspects for the country club: payroll, accounts payable, creating agendas, doing budget amendments on a day-to-day basis. So we really try to be fair to the taxpayer with those operational aspects get passed on to the country club only for the portion that they use. We also reallocated the so-called beach restoration tax, which some of you may see on your tax bill. Instead of pushing it into a capital reserve fund, we reallocated that potential $100,000 expense to go towards the actual debt service for the East Beach Bluff bond in the next fiscal year. That helped reduce the tax burden by $100,000 on the village residents. The next slide, we're going to talk about our operational initiatives. As I mentioned before, we met one-on-one with the department heads. The reason for that is that it gives each department head more control and more responsibility over their individual budgets. It allows them to feel that they have a hand in the actual aspect of running the village government and that they can kind of keep their budgets within means so that they know how much they can spend and what their starting points are. We're still in the middle of our deep dive with PKF O'Connor Davies, who is our independent audit firm that the village contracted out to take a look at our capital fund. There are some inconsistencies with the funding and allocation within the capital fund. So they're getting pretty far along in that process, where the hope is that by the end of the fiscal year, we'll have some idea as to what the results of that deep dive are. But the treasurer's office is in constant communication with them, and we're still working through what the potential ramifications of the capital fund are to the general fund and to the taxpayer. The other important initiative was ensuring operational and fiscal responsibility and oversight from the board over the budget transfer and the budget amendment process. In past years, the treasurer's office had a little bit of independent authority to make budget transfers and budget amendments up to certain amounts without board approval and without any oversight. It is important that any changes made to this budget are done by the board, and they're done in full view of the public so that everybody understands that the board is who controls this budget and who controls the finances for the village. And we're continuing to look at our total reporting structure to maximize our efficiency and our performance by looking at how all the departments are interconnected, how can we improve it in the future, and what changes may or may not be necessary down the line. So we're going to go right into the actual numbers. So this slide is our total budget summary. What you're going to see is that on the general fund, we had an increase of spending of less than $100,000 total from last fiscal year to this upcoming fiscal year. That's less than 1% spending increase. The Country Club Fund has about a 22% increase in their spending. And that's largely driven through membership fees and ancillary costs related to actually playing golf, cart fees, the retail shop, and the like. And some of the reason for those fee increases for the Country Club Fund is that they need more seasonal help. They need to have more staff. There needs to be more capital investment into the Country Club Fund. So we were able to establish a roughly $200,000 interfund transfer expense line for the Country Club Fund to do more capital improvements to ensure that the golf course remains strong and financially feasible into the future. And it keeps people wanting to play. So with all of that, with the 1%, less than 1% general fund increase and 22% Country Club increase in spending, we were still able to keep the total spending down to about 5% for the entire village budget. The next slide kind of goes into the pie chart as to what our revenues are, so that you could kind of get a visual. If you look to the right, you could see that property taxes are 60% of the total revenues for the general fund. Moving to the left, our pilot or payment in lieu of taxes, utility gross receipts, and franchise tax agreements with those utilities are roughly 7% of our revenue. General fund fees, which are clerk fees, vital statistics, registration, and the like, they're about 1% of the total revenue. Parks, Recreation, and Village Center, right around 6%. And that involves fees that we charge for summer camp and recreation programs and room rentals. Parking meter fees are 6%. Concessions, rents, that's our lease with Danford's up at the Waterview. That's roughly 3% of the total revenue. Building, planning, zoning fees, permit fees, inspection fees, that's about 5% of the total revenue that comes into the village. Justice court fines and fees are 4%. State and county aid, that would be your mortgage tax aid and your state aid money, that's another 5%. We have unclassified revenues, which is about 2%. That's any revenue that the village receives that can't be put into any of the other buckets that are within the budget. And then to the right, this one is, I'll elaborate on, is premium on obligations, which is 1%. So the village is going through the process of converting our bond anticipation note for the East Beach Bluff to a bond at the end of this month. When we went to bond sale, we got a very competitive rate on the interest, and we received a premium on that obligation, which can be used towards the first debt service payment and interest. That was roughly $112,000, which is going to go right back to lowering property taxes and keeping the village burden lower for that project for the first year of that bond payment, which is it's a great benefit for the village. The next slide is our appropriations. We're going to start to the left this time and look at employee benefits and debt service. So those are the largest pieces of the pie when it comes to costs for appropriations. Our employee benefits are roughly 23% of all the expenses within the general fund, $2.5 million. Debt service is another 14%. It's about $1.5 million. That includes your bond anticipation notes, bands, your bonds, and our capital leases, which are the contracts we have for our equipment and vehicles that the village has contracted out. Moving to the right, our general government support, it's 21%. That would involve your treasurer office, involves attorney fees, your insurance, the clerk's office, justice court. Public safety, 8%. That's your code enforcement. Public safety, which is your fire marshals and building inspectors. Transportation is 15%. That is our highway department and all costs associated with that, sidewalks, paving. Economic assistance and opportunity, that's less than 1%. Those are our senior programs, which we receive some community development block grant money to help fund those programs. 13% is our culture, parks, and recreation. That would be our parks department, the village center, recreation, and all the programs associated with those departments. Home and community services is 6%. That would be our building and planning department, zoning, as well as our street cleaning operations, including the LEAF program. So we go to the next slide. We can kind of see this is how we can break down what we have control over versus what we don't have control over. Our non-discretionary spending. So we were able to bring salaries down. Part of that is the retrenchment of the parking operations. As you can see, the employee benefits went up, insurance up. We were able to bring the budgetary debt service down, as well as the bid disbursement, just a slight decrease, and that's based off of assessed valuation. So our total non-discretionary spending went up by $350,000. Our discretionary spending, which is what we do have control over, we were able to bring down. We reduced equipment costs by $30,000, and we reduced our contractual and miscellaneous supplies by $237,000. And when you look at it visually, you can see that the large majority of our spending we don't have control over. Roughly 77% of the village budget is non-discretionary, where 23% is what we have control over. As we continue on, this is where we get into the tax portion of this. So our total appropriations for the general fund are $11,458,475. Our estimated revenues that are not property taxes, a little over 4.6 million. The actual property tax piece is going to be $6.738 million. The bid assessment is $106,000. Now, your bid assessment and your property tax assessment are what make up the tax levy that is controlled by the New York State tax cap. That is what they mean, those two numbers together. So our total tax levy for fiscal 24-25 will be $6,845,245.40, which is just about a 2% increase from the prior year, which was $6.710 million. Now that's a great accomplishment to keep that spending to the 2% theme for New York State. New York State establishes the 2% tax cap to try and make sure that local governments don't grow their tax base beyond what is necessary. The village is actually coming in way under what the New York State allowed. New York State said that the village could raise taxes up to $7,398,000. We're coming in roughly $553,000 under that number, under that limit. What does this mean to the taxpayer? This means on a per $100 of assessed value, the increase is going to be about $1.45. If you look at the slides, we have three different tiers: low, residential, assessed valuation, middle, and high. The majority of the residential properties fall within the low and the middle assessed valuation numbers. But when you look at the average residential taxpayer will see an increase of roughly $56 for the year, a little over $4 a month. When you look at the commercial taxpayer for their properties, you're looking at a $106 increase for the year. So we were really able to keep those numbers down from where we had initially started. And that is the end of the presentation.
Okay, before I open the public hearing, I would like to express extreme gratitude to the Treasurer's Office, which consists of Stephen Gafka, who just presented this budget, and Michelle Ferrante, who is the Deputy Treasurer, and they work very closely side by side with support from Lynn Spiro, but the two of them together really do our day-to-day revenue and expenses sort of fiscal operation. And I just want to express on behalf of the Board of Trustees, they can say it themselves if they so choose, but also for the taxpayers, thank you so much for your hard work and dedication. And it does not go unnoticed. It's very much appreciated. But with that said, is it now Clerk Perillo time to open the public hearing? Okay, do I have a motion to open the public hearing to discuss the fiscal year 2024-25 Village of Port Jefferson tentative budget?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The hearing is open, and I'd like to start with offering an opportunity for the trustees to ask questions or make observations.
Sure.
Couple of questions. First one I have for is Sylvia. This budget hearing was properly advertised and everything, right?
Is it Clerk Perillo? Do you want to come up to the microphone, please, if you're going to answer this? But I suppose Stephen could answer too, but
Yes, it was. It was properly noticed. I believe it was the March 14th edition of the paper.
Good. And it was, we've had it on the website numerous times, and I know we've talked about it, numerous times that the budget hearing was coming up.
So and this may be a reiteration, but we posted the budget on the website as well as the modified budget. The modified budget was highlighted in such a way so that the public was aware of the difference between the tentative and the modified.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Stephen, one question for you. You talked about the chips that doesn't mean that we're not going to be paving, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to be doing the paving. It's just a matter of where you're putting the CHIPS funds.
That's correct. To elaborate a little bit, we received $115,000 from National Grid, which I moved over into capital. And then when we receive the actual allocation for the CHIPS towards Port Jeff, we can plan our project, make sure that it is eligible for the CHIPS funds, and then budget those expenses in the capital fund.
Thank you. And I just want to echo what the mayor said. Thank you very much to Stephen and to Michelle. I know firsthand how much work goes into this, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the changes that you made after you met with the trustees and everything. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Absolutely.
I also had a chance to meet with Treasurer Gafka twice, actually, because our first meeting, we got about 2/3 the way through the budget because I always have so many questions. And Stephen had a lot of answers. It was really, really helpful. We were able to talk about not only a couple of items that I was hoping to see funds allocated to in the budget, but also potential ways to save, bringing especially an environmental lens to looking at the budget, potential water savings, in the village throughout our parks and other measures. So it was a really very productive way to to sit down and go truly line by line with the budget. So I thank you for that, and thank you for finding a way to get the $2 per capita for allocated for tree plantings and forestry, so that we're one step closer to becoming a Tree City USA. So really happy to see that in this proposed budget. Thank you.
Not a problem. And just to elaborate on that, in the modified budget, if you scroll through towards the end by the beautification line, you'll see a new line for tree plantings and forestry. It's about $17,000, which is a little over $2 per capita. And that's so that, again, we can become a Tree City USA designation, and we were able to do that without increasing taxes.
Excellent. Thank you. And that goes towards our green infrastructure to help with flooding as well. So we're really, really glad to be seeing that and look forward to the village having that moving forward.
Thank you. Trustee Laux, any questions? Okay. Okay. I just want to also express some gratitude to our treasurer for really bringing his influence into these board meetings, whereby the procedures that we work to identify funds and transfer funds and which budget they're coming from, and that the board has an opportunity to vote on these measures is greatly appreciated. I think it's not just the right thing to do, it also gives the board members, trustees, an opportunity to see how it's done in real time, because they are voting on these things, and then they can ask questions about why are we voting on this if they so choose. So I just appreciate that candid, sort of transparent approach, and the fact that we are following generally accepted accounting principles in this way now, and that's as advised by and regulated by the state controller's office, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I have a question. You may or may not know the answer to this. Anyone in this room may or may not know the answer. So anyone that might have an answer is it's about the state budget. Do we know if the state budget has passed? Is there a temporary agreement? There's nothing yet. So we don't know about our state aid yet.
The last time I saw, they had extended it at least 8 days, and that was as of, I believe, Friday. So it's they're operating day to day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think the goal was Thursday.
They want to get it done before Passover because then everybody's leaving Albany.
Sure.
All right.
But that's failed in the past, so
Yeah.
who knows?
All right, thank you. So now I'd like to invite public comment. There's a microphone and a podium on our right. If there's anyone who would like to, has public comment about the budget presentation or questions, now's the time. Okay, seeing none, I would now entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion, second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, and just an announcement that comments will continue to be accepted, public comment will continue to be accepted by the clerk, the village clerk, at sperillo@portjeff.com, in the clerk's office through April 20th. And what are the next steps after that, Stephen?
So after that, if there's any substantive changes that need to be made to the tentative budget as it is modified, which I will just say you can find online. You go to the Village of Port Jeff website and you go to the Treasury to the tentative budget. You will see both versions. And again, as stated, the modified budget from the tentative is highlighted in yellow. So you can see all of the changes that were made and follow along so you can compare both. So after we close, after the 20th, we will, if there's any changes made, we will have to adopt resolutions amending each individual change and then adopt the budget as amended if there are any amendments made to the tentative budget as presented. And then we will adopt the budget at the April 24th.
Okay. So that's our next meeting, April 24th, when we will have a vote to adopt the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. I stated it before, but it's the first budget of this administration, and I just have complete faith in the presentation in your process, and the presentation was very well done, and really appreciate all your hard work on this.
Thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this.
Thank you. And now we will, this is a formal hearing, so that's why we sort of, for the work session, elected to sit up here in the formal seats of the trustees, but now we're converting back to a work session, and I'd like to invite the board to come and sit down around the work session table for a more informal but formal dialogue. Thank you.
You good?
Thank you for joining me around this more cozy table for our work session, which will start with monthly reports. I have a few. I just wanted to update the board that we are working closely with the Parks Department on creating a program by which the planters going down Beach Road towards East Beach, they are, it's a retaining wall, and they are also planters. The Parks Department is cleaning them out as we speak. There are 65 there, and they are designing, they're working with a local nursery to design vignettes for those planters that are, that will acclimate to the environment. And we're getting prices for those planters, and we're looking at working with the Conservancy to manage it with our fund, with our residents, to see if they're interested in supporting those planters individually. And I spoke with this somewhat with Trustee Cassay as the liaison to the Conservation Advisory Council. And I don't know if you've had a chance to speak with them about this yet, but if you have, I'll.
Not yet. Their next meeting is coming up next week, I think.
And I'm supposed to send you the email too,
Yes,
aren't I? Okay,
yes.
all right, I'll do
send
that.
a reminder to remind, yeah.
Okay, thank you. But it's exciting. I mean, those planters running down the hill to East Beach have been overgrown for quite a number of years, and just seeing them cleaned up alone is a happy conclusion, and hopefully we'll have or a happy circumstance, not conclusion, but I hope we'll have some opportunities to work with the residents who might be interested. I know I am interested in sort of supporting one of those planters with plantings that I'd like to see. So I think we'll be able, as residents and even not the village, will be able to design these planters the way that we want, with the plantings, the different species that our Parks Department has identified for that. So it's moving forward, and it's exciting. So as we announced earlier this week, parking, paid for parking, the paid parking program opens on April 15th. And there have been some changes to that program. That first, in that it's opening April 15th. Last year it opened on April 1st. Second, it will be a uniform cost to all people who are paying for their parking spaces from 12 noon to 8 p.m. That's a difference. I think prior years it was 12 to 11 p.m. So, and so these two changes, in addition to others, were recommended by the parking committee, and so we are adopting some of those changes. We will put some of these fee structures on as a resolution tonight. Not tonight, no. Or are we voting on this tonight? No, next week, next meeting. So the other aspect is we're removing a lot of signs that have been proven to be redundant and also inaccurate. Some of the meters that are out there are also reflect information that is no longer up to date. So we are going to need to change that. So it's we have a lot of different departments, as our treasurer has mentioned in the budget presentation. We have a lot of departments working together to collect the right data that is going to help guide us moving forward to make changes in real time, or observations, or how are things working? What are they doing? Is it working? So it's fascinating, but it is requiring the efforts and energies of a lot of people in Village Hall and outside of Village Hall. Department of Public Works is involved, Treasurer's Office, as Stephen iterated, which departments are involved, clerk. So I think we'll find some positive, more organized, a more positive, organized approach, and gratitude to the parking committee that is made up of 8 individuals on the parking committee. And so Andy Freeling is the ex officio village representative, staff representative, not a voting member. But there are, I believe, 6 residents on that committee. And among those 6 residents, 4 or 5 are also involved in businesses. So, and then 2 are not residents, but are involved in businesses in the community. So it's a very fair and equitable, diverse representation of the people who are interested and want to see parking succeed. So
Do we have an opportunity to touch on a couple of those? Because I know we had a presentation from Andy Freeling, sort of from the parking committee with these proposed changes. And then I don't know that we've sat down and been able to work through the logic. 'Cause we had started to ask questions when Andy was here, but we essentially wanted to get through the presentation, so didn't turn into a discussion.
You want to ask questions? We can talk now.
Sure,
We
yeah,
have time.
no, specifically the changing the end time of meter parking from 11 p.m. to 8 p.m. I just don't understand the logic of that.
It was a recommendation from the committee, and I believe it was to make people who are parking in the village feel a little bit more welcome later at night. And it was sort of not necessarily a successful or welcoming feeling that clientele were receiving, felt like they were being received by the, say that again, restaurant owners thought this was more of I don't want to say money grab, but it was something that that the village looked to as a revenue driver versus a need for managing the parking. So,
Which I
I
can,
mean, you can park on Main Street at any point after a certain time.
right.
People will come in and park and have dinner after a certain time. They don't have to put money back in the meter or put it back on their, through the app. They just felt it was more welcoming and would increase their ability to do business later after the actual dinner hour. I think I said that right. I don't know.
Sure. And I understand those points as a business owner. I know we always want our customers to be happy, and so if they're not having to pay for parking, then that's great. I guess putting my village hat on though, that revenue in a sense could be helping to make the parking program, in our parking lots, going into the maintenance of them, the long-term care of the parking lots. So the people who are coming and using those lots, from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. too, the village is welcoming them by providing hopefully a clean parking lot, a well-maintained parking lot. I know they need to be repaved or redesigned or they need a lot of re's. So I just from a fiscal standpoint,
I hear your question. Sorry to cut you off, but I know what you're asking, right? Do you have-
I guess it's more of a statement than a question. It's just
Oh,
like, yeah.
okay.
just
So
like-
what I'll say, what my answer to your statement is that I've asked for numbers about how much revenue we've generated after 8 p.m., between 8 and 11, and between 6 and 11. And I'm waiting to get those numbers. So, and I'm also looking to the treasurer to see if it has an influence. The other thing is I know the parking committee was looking at this as a pilot to see if it works for the merchants to increase their business later after the 8 o'clock hour. So, but I'll look to Stephen to see, because you gave me a look too, maybe you have some information that I don't have.
Well, preliminarily, I think the idea, based off of we need more data to back it up, but preliminarily, there is more paid parking during the day than later on at night. And also, I believe that the flat rate of going to the same rate Monday through Sunday would help offset some of those costs. If not, it may surpass what was initially budgeted.
And I really appreciate all the work that the parking committee has, put their heads together, and there's these various proposals. I guess I look at it kind of like if you're trying to figure out what you're allergic to, you take everything out of the diet and then you start adding things back at once, because otherwise you don't know what's helping, what's really the X factor. So I guess I'd be more of a favor of making changes, like if we're making that change of the, flat rate for parking throughout the week, to the 150, right, with the 2-hour minimum. That's a change we're already making. And then the other major change being, what was the second proposed?
Starting on April 15th versus April
Right,
1st.
Right. But then the other biggest X factor that's coming in is the enforcement part of it, which I know the mayor, the board, administration's been working very closely with code to try to make more uniform the enforcement of parking so that it's not a guessing game, so that customers are not unhappy because, well, I've parked here 5 times before and never paid, and now I got a ticket, So making sure that everybody's on the same page. So I guess for me, I'd rather, before we start changing hours, try all these other things, see what the results are, and then if we feel like, okay, we're comfortable, if the treasurer says, here's the, budgeted amount, the projected amount for improvements moving forward. Because again, I know, the parking lots are okay, but we want those to look welcoming. We want those to look well kept. And so I wouldn't be opposed to the folks who are visiting the village, coming in, using them, contributing at, $1.50 an hour to that maintenance.
A key part of this, which you referenced, is the code enforcement aspect of it. And we are doing a deep dive on that to make sure our code enforcement officers are trained and understand how the technology works and use the technology the way it was meant to work, and that the staffing is adequate. And that is one of the things that we need to look at to make sure before we make major changes. None of these seemed major from my perspective, but interested in that point of view, that it feels like a major change to move from 11 p.m. enforcement to 8 p.m. enforcement. We'll know when we get those numbers, and we're waiting to hear from the actual. I think there's a couple of different ways to get those numbers, and getting it from the vendor is one of the ways that we have to get those numbers, and also from our treasurer's office. I think, Stephen, you can pull those numbers.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to work on that as we speak.
Oh, nice. Okay, if it comes up and you can inform us in real time, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I would certainly also estimate that those numbers will change going forward. If we make the change from 11 back to 8, those revenue numbers are going to be different going forward than they were in the past.
We wanted to benchmark it and see what it looked like.
Thankfully, with the online software and portal we have through Honka Mobile, I can actually download as a Excel and look at all of the start times, and I'll be able to come up with a percentage of blocks of time of when most of the people are using and when most of the transactions happen. So as soon as I'm able to do that analysis, I'll provide it to everybody. I'll see if I can get it before the end of the work session.
And the other question that came to mind in that is, do we really believe that having paid parking at $1.50 an hour is repelling business past, between the 8 p.m. and the 11 p.m.? Or are people really choosing not to come to Port Jefferson because of the parking fee? If the argument is that if you get rid of the parking fee, then maybe businesses will have more patronage during that time. I just don't know if someone's coming down to spend, $40, $50 plus per person on a meal, that $1.50, per hour parking is going to keep them from visiting the village and spending money here.
It was probably more of an inconvenience than it's money.
Sure.
I'm in the middle of my meal. I've got to leave and put more money in the meter.
Well, we have you get like a text message now. That's my understanding. It says, do you want to re-up? And you just hit a button. And then
And also, don't forget, the whole idea of managed parking is to manage the parking. After 8 o'clock, there's less cars there, so there's less to manage.
Correct.
except that you have to, in the long term, manage the parking, like the infrastructure of it.
Correct. Yeah.
What you will see in the agenda for the August 24 resolution agenda is a code. April 24th, what did I say? August? A's and J's. A's and J's. Sorry. So the April 24th agenda will feature a code change to the CCMAC, in which we are looking to reduce the number of members to the CCMAC without any prejudice, or it's really kind of dwindled itself down to that number, from 11 to 7. That, and also to incorporate as a standard member of the CCMAC would be to include the president of the Board of Governors for golf on that, on the council automatically, just as the president of the Tennis Association is automatically appointed to that council. So, and we've received some resignations, and we are seeking a candidate for the non-member resident role. And we do have a volunteer who has stepped up with interest in that role. So I don't know if I can say that name here, or if anybody's interested in talking to me about that, I'd be happy to. But once I've received a commitment from this person. So if anyone else has other ideas, I'd be happy to entertain other nominations.
Is that listed on the Make a Difference website?
Your CCMAC is,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, yeah.
And is that,
But it's not, yeah, it is actually. So you can put your name in and be considered for the CCMAC. We received today from PW Grosser a design for the Phase 2 mitigation of the recharge basin between Old Homestead Road and Oakwood Road. And we're working through those details now, and we hope to have that project completed before the end of the summer. So what we had to do today, the clerk and the treasurer both contacted FEMA, the funding agency, to extend the deadline of that grant. And so next steps are to see if we can't get some costs on what it would cost to execute against the design. If anybody's interested in seeing that design, I'd be happy to show it to you. What else? Code enforcement. Just a real quick update on the Steeple Fest, which takes place at the high school track every April. This year it's April 24th. It's 2 weeks from today. We'll be talking here while things are transpiring down off of Brook Road and at the high school track. I'm just going to read off so the Board of Trustees is aware what code has been working on with the athletic department at Port Jeff School District. Buses will drop off athletes at the high school and park in the teacher's parking lot and at Spring Street and Our Lady of Wisdom. So those buses will be parking off-site and on-site at the high school around the bowl, not up off of Brook Road. They will not be letting students off up at Brook Road. So athletes will cut through Middle School Breezeway to access the field. The teams will be picked up by buses in front of the high school driveway. Officials will park on Brook Road near the track entrance. Spectator parking will be in front of the high school with overflow at Caroline Avenue Field. Code officers as well as school staff will be on hand to direct traffic and assist with parking. So I think that should help the residents in that community feel a little bit better about that arrangement.
So there'll be no buses on Brook Road?
No
parking
buses on Brook Road.
Perfect.
If they need to drop off an ADA a student with that requires ADA point of access, that could happen up there. But they will be communicating with Port Jeff Athletic Department if that should need to happen, so they'll know. The code officers and the school district, Stan, you might want to talk to this. I don't know if you had a chance. I don't want to jump in. Is this in your report about Scraggy?
I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but I did not get a chance to get in to see Jessica in relation to that other situation that's really more serious than Scraggy, I think.
Oh, that, okay. So we can raise that here, but I'll give you the opportunity to talk about that. But code enforcement also put up the blockades in front of resident homes on Scraggy Hill when the NISMA concert challenge performances were taking place at the elementary school. I guess it was over the weekend, right?
Yeah.
So that was received with gratitude and appreciation by the residents. Just a real quick update about the country club. The restaurant up there is going through several soft opening events to get their restaurant operations up to snuff. The superintendent and the staff up at the country club working on the golf course have been working extremely hard to get the course ready. It opened on March 29th to great reviews. Stan, you may have some input on that. I'd like to give your feedback on that as well. We're very happy with where the season has started so far with golf, and the bunker project that this board voted on to approve so quickly to get started and get going is well underway and near completion, and it should be completed certainly before the end of April. And then finally, the general manager is forming a steering committee to help guide the next steps for the campus, the country club campus on the north side of Fairway Drive. So that's something that's just about to get started. We will post that to the Making a Difference webpage so that anyone who's interested in participating in that can volunteer and participate in that steering committee. I also, I'll talk about this. It's not come to fruition, so I don't want to jinx it, but I've reached out to a faculty member at Stony Brook University who's well-versed in coastal erosion and mitigation of storm water erosion, and asked if he would take part in forming a 3-person expert committee of scholars and people with subject matter expertise who can help give us some feedback about the plans that were designed for phase 1 and phase 2 of the Bluff project. So this is sort of a peer review analysis that I've requested. The initial reaction from that faculty member was, I'd be happy to do that. I have someone else in mind who would probably also be happy to work on that 3-person group. And they will be, and also Stony Brook professor, and they will be reaching out externally to identify a third party. So I just, every time I speak about something before it's due, I worry that it'll not actually happen, but my fingers are crossed on this one. And I'm also formally announcing here that we will be establishing a community commission to talk about, opine, work through, give us feedback, and sort of evaluate what other communities have done and residents along the North Shore have done to protect their homes, their property, to see what has been done in other areas, and also in Port Jefferson and Belterre, more closely to our proximity, and sort of take in all this feedback that we're getting unofficially. I'd really like to make it official and start this commission and get some feedback in earnest about the plans for protecting the bluff and protecting the property, village property, north and south of the country club facility up there.
Do we have a structure for that community committee yet?
Community commission?
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to participate is welcome.
Very good. I would just.
We would have a chair.
Yeah.
We would have probably a recording secretary, the formal
Sure.
aspects. So we would want to see minutes and very similar to what the Parks and Rec Advisory Council does, very similar to what the CCMAC does, is to present their recommendations and their findings and their updates to the Board of Trustees for consideration.
I would, as I have for years, recommend that, they're obviously be looking at, is there potential to protect the bluff, but also looking at retreat strategies, which sounds very defeatist, but in my deep research of not only the North Shore and South Shore of Long Island, but all along the Eastern Seaboard, many communities have spent millions and millions of dollars only to have to then spend many more millions moving buildings or figuring out next steps. So I would just implore that that be a piece of the conversation, not to say that that's definitely the only goal, but to not disclude it from the conversations that that group of folks have.
Well, the purpose of establishing this commission is to not disclude anything, to listen to everything. And I have my own personal feeling, and I'm not an engineer, and I'm not an architect, I'm not a geologist, I'm not a hydrologist. I need to hear from experts. I think this board would benefit from hearing from experts, contradictory or not, as to what's happening now and what is planned to come with FEMA's support, and how we deal with this going forward. And my mind is open. All I know is I swore an oath when I took office to protect and preserve property in the village of Port Jefferson, and that's my goal as the mayor. So a lot of people who have other feelings about this bluff did not take that oath. So that's why I feel strongly about doing everything that we can do as mayor to do the right thing and preserve our property. This is a gem. This is an asset that we have in our village. It brings in revenue to offset the tax, the costs of the levy. And it also is an incredible recreation resource. A lot of people have had their weddings, bar mitzvahs, communions there. Residents have memories of this facility, and their experiences are very important to this administration. So but again, I feel that, we're hearing a lot, and I want the noise to be organized and understood in a unified way. So we're not just like deflecting or saying you're right or you're wrong, or how do we go about dealing with this? And so that's the approach. Thank you. Okay, that is the end of my report. Next comes on the list, Trustee Giuliano.
Thank you. DPW update. As the old name implies, the village of Drowned Meadow kept up to its reputation. The streets flooded again, major rain event that we had at the end of March and the beginning of April as well. Cleanouts of the overflow drains are underway to help alleviate future issues. Requests for quotes to repave the following village streets have gone out: Laurel Avenue, Birch Road, Oak Court, Dogwood Road, Elm Court, Pilgrim Drive, Puritan Path, Maroki Trail, Mayflower Drive, Settlers Path, and Cooper Court.
What was that for?
Request for repaving, for paving of those roads.
So a request, or that's what they have planned?
That's what Steve has.
They're requesting it of the
yes,
board.
exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
Gotcha.
that's what Steve requests to pave for this year.
Okay.
Suffolk County Water Authority, the project has begun in various locations. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people have come across it and seen people stopping traffic and everything, but Jones Avenue, Robbins Lane, Avenue A, Main Street, Liberty Avenue, and Old Post Road West are being worked on by the Suffolk County Water Authority. And, we ask for residents' patience while that work is being done. hopefully the road won't be closed in entirety, but we just have to be careful going through those areas.
Just a question on that. I know there was mentioned sometimes when a utility does a major project that cuts up the roads, they'll contribute towards or repave the roads. I know I've seen the patch, it's essentially almost a quarter of the road, like a fifth of the road, that's been dug up and then sort of just a long road, the whole length of the road patched. Is that something that we are going to be speaking with the Water Authority about providing new paving for these roads?
We have an answer for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know
Okay.
the answer to this, but, while the utilities, we do secure funding from the utilities to compensate for the work that they do to repatch or repave the roads, Suffolk County Water Authority is not subject to that stipulation.
No.
So there are two entities. I think it's the Water Authority and I don't remember who the other one is, but,
Their
yeah.
patching isn't very good.
No, it
No.
isn't.
Well,
I'm
they,
living the dream.
this is what I understand is, and Steve can talk you through all this, but what I understand is they patch so that they can get back in there when they need to go back in. It's every night. They dig, they work, they patch, they dig, they work, they patch, they dig, they work, they patch. So they don't, day after day. I don't know if they're going back onto Jones or
They
not.
are, because it's a two-step process. It's a two-step process. We got a letter that they are replacing, laying down new main. When they lay down all the new main, they're coming back to connect that main, and then they're going in to remove the old main. So the roads are going to be really bad, I think. Judging from my street, not too good. And they cut my gas line.
Did they repair it?
Yes, after much consternation and me having to call National Grid.
You had to call.
I had to call National Grid.
They were very apologetic about that, were they not?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Not enough to call National Grid, though. Yeah, so that's the case. That's the issue. I mean, they are not statutorily required to do that. Or they're not required to pay permit fees. It's just,
Right.
yeah.
To their credit, though, I will say, when I called the Water Authority and told them what was happening in front of my house, super efficient, polite, wanting to resolve my problem. So I can't complain about them. It's not the Water Authority doing the digging, it's a contractor.
Right.
So we should make that clear.
And I'll also make clear that the contractor, I give credit to the contractor too, because we get an update from them every night or before the weekend about what's happening on Monday. So we can post it to our social media and code enforcement can also post it to social media. So we try and keep the residents updated. The residents are also updated with the written notes, I think, that Drew mentioned earlier. So they're very communicative, more communicative than anyone that I've experienced so far.
And I know as far as, gas lines or electric, Steve's on top of them as far as of LIPO or National Grid, if they're ripping up the roads, as far as staying on top of them to make sure that the roads are repaired properly. Where was I? Drain cleaning continues as long as the temperature stays constant, the way the truck works. If the temperature drops, they can't do it, but if the temperature stays constant, they'll be going through the village and cleaning out the drains. And the branch program has begun. It began April 1st. Get an update on it on the village website. As far as the parks update, the windshields, the tennis courts have been installed and the lights are set to go on at 7 p.m. and they'll remain on through 10 p.m. Safety nets have been installed over at the Joe Erlin Field at Caroline Avenue to keep the balls out of the street of neighboring properties. Grading at the parking lot of Centennial Park was done by the Parks Department. East and West Beach bathhouses, they've been cleaning them up, painting, new security lighting has been installed, in prep for the nice weather and in prep for the beaches to be opened. Repairs to the surface of Rocket Ship Park and the equipment repairs are set to begin as the weather allows. Unfortunately, these repairs will cause the park to be closed for about a week, and we apologize for any inconvenience, but that's for the safety of people using the park. And the spring hanging baskets will be installed beginning of May. As far as the Parks and Rec Committee update, unfortunately, the meeting was scheduled last Wednesday, and it was canceled due to the rain and the wind that we experienced. So the next meeting is scheduled for the first Wednesday in May. As far as the Conservancy goes, the memorandum of understanding, they're working on the memorandum of understanding between the village and the Conservancy is being reviewed and will be updated. Public Safety Advisory Council. There's a number of requests that the board has received lately for stop signs, speed limit changes, etc. I asked the mayor about reinstating the PSAC, Public Safety Advisory Council. She informed me that the PSAC is indeed on the Make a Difference link on the village website. She then asked if I would spearhead getting the word out. So this is me getting the word out to everybody that the committee is being reformed, and we would love to have the residents join. Look at, study, review the operation of various village ordinances that involve public safety and welfare, and to advise the Board of Trustees on any modifications or improvements that could foster improved public safety and quality of life changes in the village. So anything that they can make recommendations to this board for any public safety recommendations that they have, be it stop signs, be it speed limits, whatever the case may be. Like I said, we've been getting people asking about different recommendations, and so this is something that we can refer over to the PSAC, and they can make a recommendation back to the board. So if anyone's interested in joining this committee, go online, sign up, and you'll be contacted shortly. And finally, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little, and there's been a lot of posts, misinformation, misunderstandings, half-truths on social media, and speculation on various village matters. Instead of making assumptions and conjectures as to what the village is doing, I ask please reach out to me or reach out to anybody on the board. My Saturday sit-downs, my next Saturday sit-down will be April 20th from 9:30 to 11 on the second floor of the Village Center. If you have a question or comment, ask me. If I know the answer, I'll give it to you. If I don't know it, I'll find out the answer. And if I cannot, for some reason, answer it, I'll let you know why I can't answer it. But posting innuendos, falsehoods doesn't help the village at all. If you want to know what's going on, ask me, meet with me, email me, ask one of my colleagues here on the board. I'm sure that we'll all be glad to fill you in and set you straight on various village matters. So that's me on my soapbox, so I'm now off it. Thank you.
Falsehoods on social media.
Trustee Laux, you're up.
Okay, I'm going to first report on things that are going to happen, and then I'll report on things that I hope will happen. Dovetailing Bob's report, the beaches are going to open on June 22nd. The lifeguard hours this year are going to be Monday through Friday from 11 to 6. On the weekends, we're going to have them there from 10 to 6, 1 hour earlier. We have senior programs up at the rec center now on Wednesdays and Thursdays. These are free for all village residents and the town of Brookhaven residents due to a grant that we've received. Beach fitness classes are going to start on May 3rd at the East Beach. Adult Softball League is starting April 15th for men and May 7th for the women. Youth swim lessons with Sharon will begin July 13th at the East Beach. This is way down the road, and it will be announced more often. Summers Farmer Market is starting May 5th, outdoors. The kayak situation, we still have I know Bob and I kind of crossed paths on the kayaks. The lottery was held. We still have quite a few openings in key spots also. There's still some openings over at Crystal Brook, believe it or not. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about what I hope will happen. perhaps we can dovetail this too, Bob. I observed the situation in person up at the high school as a result of complaints that come quite often through Lauren, myself. The situation at dismissal time up at the high school is dangerous, to say the least. The pickup of students in front of the school and along the school is such that if an emergency vehicle had to come down through there during dismissal time, it wouldn't happen. If the fire department had to go through there, it wouldn't happen. The solution, if we come up with a solution, we're going to need cooperation with the schools. I would like to meet, and I will be meeting with Jessica to discuss this. I didn't get a chance to get up there today. I have some suggestions that I don't know how far they'll go. It's, we talked about taking signs down. We may want to put signs up. The stopping and parking along that road in the afternoon. If we could come up with an alternative place for the students to be picked up, it could be maybe in the school parking lot. If the parents come in the lower entrance, drive through somehow. But the existing situation up there cannot continue. The students do not use the crosswalk at all. We have a Suffolk County crossing guard there that crosses maybe 25 to 50 people at dismissal.
Mostly teachers, right?
The teachers use the crosswalk. The students don't. The communication has to be improved, and I'm going to talk with the school about this also. We had an affair the other night up at Scraggy that the village was not notified about. It did create a few problems. I think we should be informed so that we can assist in any way possible with our code, the traffic situations. No stopping sign, or I don't know how to solve that problem over at the high school. It's complicated.
I agree. Sorry, Rick. I agree. It requires collaboration with the district. Obviously, it's the district's students, parents of students in the district are dropping kids off in an area where, there's a fire hydrant right there, right? There's a lot of U-turns going on, and it's convenient, no question, but it's just.
We provide busing for just about every student in this community, and it doesn't seem to me that the busing is being utilized with the number of students that are being picked up by parents.
It's a national trend,
Yes,
believe it or not.
it is. I actually worked in a school district where we had to, at the junior high school level, not allow parents to come onto school property to pick their students up. We provided buses, and it was a fight, but eventually the kids got on the buses. That situation over there, if you want to go up there during dismissal and take a look at it,
Good luck.
good luck, because you
getting through,
you can't get, you have to walk to get near it. You're not going to drive up through there. And that's a pedestrian's car, let alone an emergency vehicle.
This isn't the first notification that we've had that this needs to be addressed, right? Was there, I shot the information over to, or I forwarded over to the Public Works office, and they were involved in several discussions about it as well, but it sort of stalled. So I think you're right, Stan. I think it needs to be revisited with the district, with the Board of Education. if our point of contact is with the Board of Education, or if it's with the superintendent, or if it's with both, if it's with the Transportation and Facilities Department, but, I think it's becoming it's at a tipping point.
And it has to be done in cooperation, of course, the streets are the village,
Right.
and the schools are the schools. They've got to come to work together somehow and solve this problem for
Interestingly.
the sake of safety.
One of the things that came out of that letter from the resident was that the three-way stop sign at Liberty and Old Post and Liberty, like there's two Liberties, or there's two Old Posts and one Liberty, or there's two Liberties.
Yeah.
And the blinking light is still there, but it's redundant because there are three stop signs there. It's on. Yes, yeah. It needs repair, and we're wondering, it's a good question, should we repair it or should we just bring it down? But the observation from the resident was that that street backs up completely because of that extra stop sign.
Is it the stop sign?
Yeah. I haven't seen that myself, so I would like to see how that looks, but there's,
You mean people are actually stopping at stop signs?
and they are actually. So I haven't seen it myself. I haven't been there at that time of day, or in the morning when the drop off happens. But I'll be happy to attend any meeting, Stan, that you set up.
I see the drop off in the morning if I'm leaving for work, and it's backed up out of the driveway onto Main Street, where traffic coming down the hill is then slowed or stopped while people are trying to make the left by CVS to go to the school.
But are you talking about on Barnum or?
Making the left to Barnum, coming down the hill.
Main.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it backs up.
So they're dropping students off both through the driveway and
Oh, on the other side
on the other
too?
side?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so,
I think the CVS lot would be a okay place to drop students off.
It would be, but then you're asking the students to walk up the hill.
Or walk, what they're gonna do is they're gonna walk probably along where the tennis courts are in traffic with the parents who are dropping kids off and buses that are going in and things like that.
Not a walkway.
There's no walkway.
The drop off, I believe, no matter where you put it, is going to create traffic problems. It's,
and buses are a huge part of their budget, so why not utilize the buses?
Yeah.
But it's, anyway, I'd be happy to participate in any of those conversations. If anybody else is interested and would like to do that instead, I'll step aside, but 2 trustees at a time is probably the max. Okay, what else, Dan?
that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. And we'll bring code into that discussion as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Trustee Biondo.
So there's a planning board meeting tomorrow, and there will be a continuation of the Conifer 2 hearing that was going on previously. And I think the last time I mentioned it, that it was going to be the next day, they actually asked for an adjournment because there were issues that they had not resolved that the building department is asking about. And again, this hearing will be about the apartment building planned for up in Upper Port near the railroad station. And as to the business of the building and planning department, they've received approximately 29 new building permit and planning applications in the last 30 days. They're working on the proposed bamboo code, which has been referred to the village attorney, as has the mural code. And there's been meetings of the short-term rental and accessory apartment group, and they are working on various regulations and drafting requests to the village attorney for code amendments regarding Airbnbs, Verbo, and the like. And that's all we have to report for this month from them that they wanted. Oh, one other thing. Fire marshal unit, they're going through the annual business registrations, operating licenses, apartment licenses, and fire prevention permit renewals. And that is all from them.
And Trustee Cassay.
Thank you. All right, so I'll start by updating on the Department of State grant, which is a climate resilience study with a focus on flooding, which, as Trustee Giuliano noted, and everyone who lives here knows, it's very important to be looking at that and seeing what we are capable of doing to mitigate the flooding that happens throughout the village, but especially in our downtown. They, in speaking with Irene from the Department of State and then the mayor as well, we have resolved to invite 3 members of the Stony Brook University faculty to join the Project Action Committee for that, for the group that oversees the progress of that climate resilience plan. So we're excited to invite them on board and have even more of that expertise and, eyeballs and brains on the problem to make sure that this plan is something that's really going to be useful, not something that's just put on the shelf and said, great, check, we got a grant and we did the plan. We really want this to be something that the village can use for years to come to make sure that there's a step-by-step on how we can effectively make a change in mitigating the flooding. That will be in concert with the USGS study that the village was awarded. I'd pitched that to the USGS, pitched the village to the USGS in last spring or summer, and then in December we were notified to say that we were selected for a compound flood study. So these two efforts together should really provide clarity on what it is that the village can do that will have an impact on the flooding, instead of just guessing at what infrastructure is going to have an impact. Spending 6 or 7 figures on projects and then crossing our fingers and saying, well, we hope that this does something. In most scenarios, the combination of these two studies should really give clarity and make sure that every taxpayer dollar spent on infrastructure for flooding should be effective. So really excited about that. There's a community workshop that's, we haven't picked a date yet, but should be happening in May. So we'll keep everybody apprised of that, and we'll want our community's feedback on the progress of this and their insight as well. For the updating on the tree committee, first and foremost, April 24th at 5 p.m. just before our board meeting that Wednesday. If you come down early and go out to it's called the Maple parking lot just behind Oldfields and the Pie and Billy's, we'll be having an Arbor Day celebration, the first annual Arbor Day celebration for the village here. They'll be planting 2 new trees. We'll have speakers. There's a student that's going to read a poem. And then we'll also be handing out saplings to any attendees, free saplings there. If you can't come down to there, you could also get saplings at the Antique and Garden Weekend, which the Historical Society is hosting at the Village Center that following weekend, April 27th. We're going to be there with the saplings, but Antique and Garden Weekend is the 27th and the 28th. So please put that on your calendar. It's always a great community event, and almost everyone walks away with something cool from one of the vendors. So
My saplings are doing great that I got last year, by the way.
I'm so happy to hear that they're budding. Yes, I know. Mine, I think we gave out saplings 3 years ago, and mine are now actual little plants. When you get them, they look like sticks with roots. Like, it's really, you don't know how you call that a tree, but yeah. One that I had gotten from an Audubon Society event about 10 years ago. Now I can't fit my hand around the trunk. So, all good things in all good time. But thank you for that update. That's very exciting. A couple of members of the 6 Acre Park Committee have reached out for an update. I know I'm working with Clerk Perillo. We got an extension on the grant, so we'll touch base and see where we're at with that. But we are making sure that that's moving forward. I know I spoke to the treasurer about Parkland fees and the availability therein when we were having our budget discussion. So I said those should be available. So we'll circle back on that and maybe have an update at the next meeting. I attended the department head meeting earlier this month. It was really informative and very impressive to see what all of our department heads are accomplishing for the village. Not everything is sexy to talk about, as far as infrastructure and storm drain cleaning and all
That's
this.
your opinion.
I know. I was going to say, Bob Bob makes it exciting. But there's a lot that goes on in the village, and sitting around the table and just, really I was sitting on the outside of the table and just listening, and it's, there's, your taxpayer dollars are at work. And so that was, it was good to see.
Thanks for being there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I did get, as the Commissioner of Environmental Sustainability, I've gotten a couple of emails, notes, frantic Facebook messages about clearing that happened at the high school. I was able to reach out to Trustee Laux, our liaison to the schools, who reached out and asked, hey, what's going on there? They essentially cleared a whole hillside and are planning on putting a retaining wall there. So I think Trustee Laux is going to pass on a hope to see it regreened as well, but just wanted to, in case anyone else drives by and sees that, that's what's happening there. Also, just some clarity, and I didn't know this before really getting into government, school districts are really their own municipality in a sense, and so they don't have to file for permits with the village. We don't allow them or disallow them to do anything, and so we did not have any jurisdiction over that.
Have to follow the rules.
Yep.
So who do you refer them to? The people who are asking you questions, who do you refer them to at the school district?
So far, I was getting some information from Trustee Laux, but I would say the school board would be a good place to go and voice any concerns or hopes for what to see on that hillside.
The building department got those calls too.
Yeah.
So if there is a person, if you land on a person who can answer those questions, we should be able to give it to our building department folks. When they get the calls, they can say, yeah, unfortunately not our jurisdiction, but you can call.
Send it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, or Stan, if
The
you can.
administrator,
Yeah, get
someone,
the-
just a true referral and
Yeah.
an expectation of them to know that residents are going to be calling them.
Sure.
you know.
Yeah. So Stan, if you want to maybe ask that question of the superintendent, who's the right person, or is it the school board to go? Who would oversee that?
I communicate with Jessica mostly.
Great.
I have met with Ellen also. Specifically on that, the only answer I got was, it's a retaining wall. We removed all the trees, we're putting in a retaining wall. I will pursue that.
It's rough for some of our residents who know that trees are retaining
Well,
of the soil.
Obviously, if they put a retaining wall in there, I'm sure there's gonna have to be some fill put in there also. And once the fill is in there, the greenery can go in.
Okay. And hopefully it's native and beneficial to wildlife and beautiful. Oh, that won't go anywhere. That'll really stay there, except to everybody else's property and into their foundation. So, very good. Thank you for that, liaising, Stan. I've been continuing work. I've let this board know there were 2 plaques found in our DPW department with the names of folks who worked at the lace mill just on the other side of the tracks, who came back from their service in World War II. Still not super clear how these plaques ended up in our DPW, but Steve Gallagher and I figured out, hey, let's get a group of people together and figure out what we want to do with this. This group, which contains both the Port Jeff Station, which is the Comswag Historical Society, as well as our historical society, Nikkei Kampora. We have our village historian on there, the town councilman's office. And so the first step is to sort of unveil, reveal these plaques to the public, which we're doing on June 6th, which is the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So we're working, we have preliminary conversations with the VFW Hall and Port Jeff Station to sort of have a gathering around these, but we'll be putting together sort of a report to bring back to this board and email that out and hopefully get some excitement around that. I know the historians are doing genealogical research to find if there are living relatives of these service members still in the area who will come out and help us celebrate. And then lastly, there is, I'm also working with a group, including Trustee Giuliano, on looking for potential sites to put signage as well as, what are those, the metal placard called? It's the
With a P. I cannot.
Yes. Anyway, those ubiquitous historical, historical signs to something like this. Yeah. To commemorate or not commemorate, but to mark the sinking of the Lexington, which happened most closely off of Port Jeff Harbor. In the 1800s, as well as some educational signage. So we're putting a report together on that as well, which will also be shared with this board, and probably a couple of sites on Port Jeff property, including perhaps the dock, for consideration to choose one site for educational signage for this, because I mean, I know I didn't know about it. Did you? But it's a quite an incredible event. So.
Historical dinner would be the presentation.
There you go. There you go. And that is what I've been working on.
Thank you, Rebecca. Right, on to our village clerk, Sylvia Perillo.
Thank you. I have an abbreviated report this evening. I have only one resolution that I'm asking for in addition to those already in my report, and that is asking for approval of ratification for the use of translation services to be provided by Sandra Ramos Connor, and that is for documents related to our upcoming election. As we know, we have all sorts of forms and documents that need to be translated into Spanish, and this person was a recommendation from our court clerk with whom there is experience. So I wanted to thank her. We've already had conversation, and she will be engaged. We began the revitalization of our website. We had our first meeting with Civic Plus. It was a very engaging meeting. We have an entire team working on this. As you can all imagine, it's a heavy lift. There is an entire list of deliverables due prior to our next meeting, which is the 3rd of May. And there are approvals required on our side by the 26th of this month. And I wanted to thank particularly Teresa, Jen, Mary, and Rita, because without that team assisting, we could not work with any sort of speed on this. We're trying to have this accomplished within a few months. And again, it's quite the heavy lift, so I wanted to thank them all, and as well as Civic Plus, who thus far has been very easy to work with. We hope that continues. A little bit of a court update. I'm pleased to announce that we received a grant again that was applied for, and in quite a large amount, it's over $17,000. So with that money, we're going to have paint and carpet in this room, as well as new blinds and drapes, and new blinds in the court office. The team of Rita Dioguardi and Elizabeth Kidney, of course, will be working on selections. They work very well together, and I want to thank them in advance.
Okay, question there.
Yes,
Is that grant specific to those items? Or
Yes,
is that what they're recommending the grant be spent on?
both. You recommend that the grant be spent on that, and then it's become specific to those items. And that's the way the grant, my understanding is that that's the way the grant works every year.
The military person in me looks at the flags and think that the flags and the stanchions need updating and put in the right order and proper, if we have money to do that, that'd be
Missing an
great.
eagle on the flag there.
If there was money to do that, because this is the courtroom, right?
noted.
I'll inquire. Good point, and thank you.
I feel like
Thank you.
if there's money for curtains, there should be money for flags.
Thank you.
Sorry
Appreciate
to
that.
interrupt.
That's,
Not at
oh,
all.
welcome.
Ask a question. At some point, we maybe on a sidebar conversation talked about redoing the video in the room and the audio.
So that is in progress. We had an extensive meeting with the representative from the company that actually installed
Right.
the original workings here. And Jewel was kind enough to join in the meeting. So we are awaiting a proposal from their engineering staff, which actually comes back with measurements of the room, with what we need. And we're looking at a 2 to 3 phase project to make the treasurer happy, so that we can space it out,
Right.
so that we can space it out over various parts. According to the preliminary meeting that we had, the most important issue is the audio. Okay, so a revamping of the audio. The equipment isn't necessarily terrible. However, of course, it is on the older side, and it needs to be updated. Needs to be updated in a way that integrates better with more modern equipment.
Right.
So that we don't have issues in the future.
In most places I've been in now, they're mounting large screen TVs for the public to also see what's going on.
Mounting large screen TVs, what the camera that we have there
Right.
could be updated, that's
Right.
in phase 2.
Yep.
The audio is the primary.
And then maybe a switcher or something to switch between the two.
Yes, correct. All of that has already been discussed.
Great,
And we're just awaiting pricing
excellent.
on various options.
Yep.
We're going from the
Top
top to
To the bottom,
Yes.
yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. And then just trustee Laux mentioned that we do have spaces for kayaks in all locations.
Yes.
Yeah, so in all locations, and there are quite a few. There are 66 spots in just one of our locations open.
Really?
Yeah,
That's surprising.
This is after,
Exactly. They couldn't wait to get.
Yeah. Marissa in our office specifically asked me to mention that, just because of the large number of spots that we have open.
we had a waiting list 3
Yeah,
years ago. We built
absolutely.
more kayak racks.
Yeah.
And now,
Are there any questions on my report?
Speaking of permits, and
Yes, ma'am.
I'll look to trustee Biondo as well at the same time, the building department is looking at permits for outdoor dining.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes.
That there are several applications in, several have been processed, and there are others waiting to be processed?
Yes. Again, to mention, Marissa, we are, again, a team effort, working in conjunction. I am working with the building department and with Marissa. Marissa has been very helpful in the process as well. We have already issued 2 permits that were reviewed. She will not present the application to me, copy to the clerk's office, or to anyone at 88 until it's complete. So she's working with the applicant to make sure that it is a complete application, and then it goes to 88, copy to the clerk's office. So we have a procedure very well set for that.
So the public understands 88 is the building
I'm
department.
sorry.
88
yes,
North Country.
Yeah.
88 North Country Road. Sorry to be colloquial.
That's fine.
You call this building 121?
No, not ever.
You call, you call Village Center 101?
Not ever.
101A?
No, not ever.
Okay, 101A? Okay, all right, that's it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Treasurer Gafka.
I unfortunately don't have an abbreviated report. I'm just kidding.
Wait, before you go, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have a question for Sylvia again, so before we leave her report. The RFPs, we have several, what RFPs do we have in motion right now?
We have the roofs. There is a walkthrough tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. at 4 locations, and there may possibly be 5. So that is in process, if you will. That will be due shortly, I believe the beginning of next month. We also have, together with the treasurer's office, right, we need to review an RFP for which we have the asset valuations, for which we have asset inventory, for which we have responses. So we expect that for the meeting on the 24th, we'll bring a recommendation to the board,
Okay,
okay, of which company,
capital assets,
yes, of which company we will proceed with.
okay.
And last but not least, we will be going out for an RFP for cleaning services,
Okay, so the flies on the windowsill will no longer be there?
hopefully,
Okay, I'm gonna clean that up tomorrow.
hopefully.
Okay, well, let's take pictures and make sure those RFPs touch on everything, right? Windowsills included.
I was gonna say,
Okay. All right. Sidewalks in Rocket Ship Park area, RFP coming?
Not on
Anticipated.
anticipated,
Okay,
not on the immediate radar.
okay, all right. I'll leave it there. Yep.
I believe the intention's to wait till we get the roof bids and then find out the cost, because the intention is to use ARPA funds for the roofs and
Gotcha.
then see what's left to then make decisions on where we go from there.
Understood. Okay, your turn. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I have add-ons to the resolutions that were in my work session. One of which is to establish a new parks capital line and then to fund the necessary repairs for Rocket Ship Park. It's roughly $21,000. Resurfacing, missing equipment, fixing what needs to be done. And it's going to be done by the company that built it. That's their equipment, so they're the sole supplier. Also, another budget amendment and add-on to receive the JCAP grant and to establish the expense line and capital for those funds. And I do believe that when you apply for the JCAP funds, whatever you applied for is what you can use the money for. You can't use it on anything else. And then if you have any money left, you have to send it back. Right. I'll have an add-on to formally receive and set part of the budget that we did for the village did for the tennis court bathrooms. The Suffolk County Downtown Revitalization Grant, the village received $49,000 finally after that work was completed. So I can now set part of that budget for that money to those capital expenses. And then, so that's just a positive. We did receive the first pay rec for the climate resiliency grants. It was a little $17,850. We got back for that, which was then sent back to the general fund. I will have an additional resolution to fund the repair of a sinkhole relating to Old Homestead, part of the recharge basin out there, the system that gets down there at a private residence. There's a sinkhole relating to that whole system that needs to be repaired. Believe the high end estimate is around $20,000. So we'll be funding that. That'll be an additional resolution that I'll present. And I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but
Yeah, really?
that's the high end. We don't know what's under the ground. The problem is that the back in I don't know if it was October or November, we had funded a TV line look at this location. There's a lot of different material down there. There's some brick, there's some concrete. So they don't know what they're going to find when they dig. So the low end was 5,000. The high end is 20,000. Hopefully it's more towards the low end, but we need to be safe.
It doesn't resemble a sinkhole right now, but
Potential.
it's a significant.
There's a void underground which
Yeah.
could go down.
There's a
Yes.
depression currently
Yes.
that's related to that.
And I'm sure all of this rain we're having is not helping the
doesn't help.
matter.
No. I will have an additional resolution relating to the budget. If there's any amendments to the tentative budget, they will be in resolution form. If there are none, there will just be one resolution adopting the budget. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions on my report.
Again, good job with the presentation and putting the budget together.
Thank you.
Appreciate
That
it.
was very clear and concise. I think folks who are not used to or accustomed to understanding or want to understand, that was very well put forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just continued work with our building department and enforcement team, trying to move things forward in a systematic fashion, developing policies and protocols and uniformity. Working with Andy Freeling and Clerk Perillo, reviewing the code amendments, in working with the building in department on the enforcement level. We're also pulling and looking at the code to see possible code changes. That there are some things that remain in the code that probably should be removed, and some things that could streamline the governmental process. So we'll make those recommendations eventually in a more formal forum to the board. But things are moving in the right direction, I believe, on all levels. I think we're almost 100% caught up in the backlog of court cases that that were inherited by this administration and myself. And I was expect an uptick in enforcement once we streamline the accusatory process and develop these necessary protocols and procedures. But other than that, I have progress.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. Before we close, the treasurer has information for us related to our previous conversation on parking.
Oh, you do?
I
does.
do.
Yes,
I
he
actually,
does. He
I,
has-
I
he
got
has
some,
data.
I have data. All right. For the first week of July, because there's a lot of information, 13% of all transactions happened after 8 p.m. So 86% of all the transactions, or 87% rounded up, happened prior to 8 p.m. For the week, July 1st to July 7th, so the week of 4th of July, one of the busiest weeks, total 6,000 transactions.
After 8.
6,000 transactions total,
Oh.
786 after 8 p.m., 5,124 prior to 8 p.m. I'll do more I'll go further, but that's what I could get.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah. More data, it just makes me have more questions, right? Like, what about this? And what about that? So, yeah,
That's
I'm
just-
really interested. in
That's
looking at that.
just the data from the meters.
This is the this is the Honk
right.
Mobile
This
data.
is the, I call it a meter, but,
Right.
so, but we don't
No, it's
also
the pay
know.
by app. It's the text to
Right.
and
it's-
QR
it's
code.
Tap, text, app.
We would
all-
have
it's
to
the Honk Mobile
cross-reference
data.
that with enforcement to see if there was
Yeah.
turnover, things like that.
We'd also have to see Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, see, lots more questions,
You
right?
see, you bring something up and now we give you.
Yeah.
We're just
No, there's-
making more
Well,
work
I-
for
Tell
you.
us one thing, we say, oh, you
I-
find these five.
I can tell you unequivocally, there is a very large percentage of transactions that happen Friday, Saturday, Sunday above the rest of the week. It is extremely noticeable.
Right.
Stephen, is the, your presentation, that's going to be online? You can,
Yes,
Is it
the plan is to upload it online.
Okay, so noting that we've already been in executive session and it's no longer required to go back into executive session, do we have a motion to close the work session?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.